Kev. Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Kevin Graham, where we'll be looking back on the game yesterday. Apologies for the slight delay. Kevin broke his camera, but we got it working again, and we're good to go. Kev, last time you were here, obviously we were deeply concerned that then went into Thursday night, which allayed our concerns not a jot. Did yesterday's result allay any concerns that you've got about Celtic, the culture, the defence, Neil Lennon himself, the 10 in a row pursuit?
It's difficult, because you have to look at yesterday's game with the big black dog, which was Sparta, across its shoulder, slavering across that yesterday's shoulder. You have to take the two games as a package. And if you look at post-Sparta, Neil Lennon came out with a couple of bizarre comments. The main one being was the change of the culture of the dressing room, which I found really quite strange. And when you try to think about that, you're going, why does the culture of the dressing room need to change when we're 11 trophies in a row?
I know.
So
it's a contradiction, isn't it, to the previous comments where you were holding those 11 consecutive trophies up as a badge of honour, which you should. But it was a contradiction to that. So
that's up to the coaching staff, it's up to the management team to find out why that culture has changed, what has changed that culture. And I mean, we've worked in many a workplace, Paul, where the culture comes from the top.
Yeah.
So is there outside, is the culture changed at the top, or is there outside influences now changing the culture in that dressing room? We maybe need to actually consider that as well. I mean, we're really fragile, eh? We're as fragile as priceless china getting delivered by a Hermes delivery driver, I think.
Another classic analogy for you there, Kev. Thank you for that.
It's like we're extremely fragile, and I think that was shown yesterday. Even though it was a fantastic result in a venue which has been tough for us over the years, but we still give away too many chances. Mm-hmm. And you have to look at, if Andrew Dallas gave that, I know we're going to talk about referees, but if Andrew Dallas gives that penalty kick in the first half and we're 1-0 up, you actually fear of what might have happened if Motherwell had got back into it 1 each. I mean, you look at the start of the second half, we seem to no react to Motherwell getting on top at the start of the second half. Mm-hmm. They score a really, really bad goal. I mean, the free kick that they scored from was just inside our half. Mm-hmm. The ball has to travel 40 yards to the edge of the box for Declan Gallagher to get the header. Then our keeper is slow getting across there as well. It is a poor goal to lose, and it's typical of the type of goals that we do lose. Mm-hmm. As a team, we give up too many chances. For me, defending as a unit means it's not just the defence we've got a problem with. We've got a problem with the whole shape. Maybe not the whole shape. We've got the problem with the players knowing what their jobs are, because we give up far too many chances. But as we spoke on last Monday, we're either going to be sugar or we're going to be shite, it seems. And there doesn't seem to be any in between with us. But look at the positives yesterday. Tom Rogic, fantastic, man. And when you think about it, he's going through a wee purple patch just now, but he's 28. Yeah. He's in the peak of years his careers. Yeah. Has he maybe had that wee jolt that he needed when he stared at semi-retirement at Qatar? A life-changing contract he would have got to go to Qatar, but it's basically he's going into semi-retirement, going to that league. Has that maybe gave him the wee jolt that he needed to say, I need to show I've still got life as a viable top-level football player here? I mean, at 28, I wonder if he was expecting at 28 to have the bigger move away to the English Premiership been in. And that's not happened. Mm-hmm. Is that because the injuries have held him back? Is it because he struggled in the game against Sparta, but then everybody did? Is it because his injuries, he hasn't got the speed, that big move has never came about for him? Because he's got the ability. He has got the ability in his feet. And so maybe he's just now decided that it's time to actually make a decent fist at Celtic, because where is he going to end up after Celtic? The only offer on the table in the summer was a semi-retirement league in Qatar, and maybe that's disappointing to him. Maybe that's disappointing to him, it's disappointing to his agent that the big move that he wanted is not there, never materialised, hasn't materialised. But as long as we've got him, I'm quite happy. As long as he's putting in performances like that, I'm more than happy for him to see him in a Celtic jersey. Moy as well, great hat-trick. He was alive in the box when Ayeti's shot came off the post. He was following in, showed some great striker's instinct there. But his third goal, his hat-trick goal, he had no right to win that header. He had no right to score that header. But again, you go back to, maybe it's just the mindset of this, what's beginning to feel like a season. It's a ghost season to me. It's quite difficult. We're playing the games, but sometimes you find it difficult to get emotionally involved in the games.
Is it a ghost season because of the fact that we're watching it from here? We're watching it from home?
Well, no for the studio, but we're watching it from home. It seems a bit surreal. It seems a bit like, see when you wake up in the morning, or you're trying to wake up in the morning, and you're in that sort of half world between asleep and being awake, and sometimes you don't ken what's real and what's no real. It seems to be a bit like that. It's just...
Depends what you've been up to the night before, Kev.
Especially if you eat cheese later on. Now, that can be a bit weirder. But that's what it feels like. And
you're better to have a cucumber sandwich before you go to bed.
Cucumber?
Cucumber.
Cucumber.
Not just my accent or mispronunciation. But yes, I mean, when I look at the game yesterday, Kevin, it's always with the caveat of Thursday night. So although I can enjoy a victory, I can enjoy a good performance. You can enjoy the good things like that hat-trick from El Yunusi. The performance by El Yunusi has shown us the other side of El Yunusi. You know, the contrast between his performance against Sparta Prague and Motherwell are the two sides of Mo El Yunusi, you know. And I just wish he had a wee bit about him that, you know, his celebration was maybe two fingers up to some of the people who had been criticising him for his mobile phone usage. That would have been a great opportunity in a live game, but obviously he's a lot classier than that. And then after the game, when he's been awarded with the match ball, is the tradition when it comes to a hat-trick, and Lenny's giving him the big hugs and all that. What I try to do, because I'm critical, Kevin, when things aren't going well, which I think is important, but you've also got to balance that off. So you look at El Yunusi, what a turnaround from Thursday night to yesterday. So massive praise to him as a player. You're also looking at Neil Lennon, and I don't know what part he's played in that, but the very fact that he's kept him in the starting lineup, I think, was the first indication that Neil Lennon was going to try and obviously manage him through a situation which was over the top, the reaction to the mobile phone. You know, Neil Lennon getting questioned right after a game about mobile phone usage. I think probably. But what I said the other day, what I said yesterday, was it was maybe indicative of a greater issue that Lenny himself touched on with regards to a culture, this culture of undermining him as a manager, be that ball and golly flying to Spain during a pandemic, or Lee Griffiths coming back from pre-season training, or for pre-season training, overweight, something that Chris Sutton claims is still the case, and of course using a mobile phone, which apparently is against the regulations or the rules. So I was chuffed to bits for El Yunusi. I think when you see that performance, Kev, and you look at his performance in Europe, where he was basically the best player on the pitch against Lille, against a very, very good side, you see the real quality of El Yunusi. And it's a shame that the one part of his game that's missing, I think, is getting that on a consistent basis.
Definitely. That is missing. If you look at the difference of the team from Thursday night to Sunday, you've then got to look back at Thursday night and go, and the management team have got to look back at Thursday night and go, what was wrong? Why did we not get that level of performance there when we can get it on a Sunday? Right, Motherwell.
If they had somebody of any repute up front, and this is what I would say is a cautionary tale, then it certainly wouldn't have been as comfortable as 4-1, Kevin, because like you said earlier, they cut through our defence far too easily. And when you're playing a team in Europe that are doing that, you're going to be on the wrong side of a 4-1, which happened on Thursday.
Is it an attitude thing? Well, you look at Sparta on Thursday night. It was a reserve team, a youth team, and we got absolutely schooled by them. I says that on Thursday night after the game. You look yesterday as well, and you're saying it's a defence. I think it's a team. I think we get cut open far too easy as a team.
So does that come down to the shape then, the formation?
It comes down to...
As well as the personnel, it's got to come down to the shape.
It comes down to the personnel and what they're getting told to do, or what their natural instinct is, or what they're training on day in, day out. If we're getting cut open that easily, then there is a problem, and it's up to the management team to sort it out. Now, we're sitting here on a Monday, and we sit here most Mondays, and for me sitting here now, the difference between last Monday and this Monday is I think it's now quite clear that Neil Lennon has got the backing of the people who he needs the backing of. I think that is extremely clear, that they're maybe giving him the leeway because of the COVID and because of the injuries. And maybe there's some of us sitting here listening, talking, who don't have the belief that Lennon is the right person to take us longer term. But the only people that he needs to believe in him are the people in charge. And I think you saw the way that we reacted on, the club reacted on Friday. It was kind of hunkered down. Back the manager, there was a lot of PR stuff because it was her birthday. But for me, as a fan watching it, if Neil's got that belief, if Neil's got that backing and the belief from those in charge, then we just need to go with it. We can comment on it, but we can't. There's not going to be any knee-jerk reaction, and I think history proves with the people who made the decision in our club, Peter Law, Dermot Desmond, that there's never any knee-jerk reaction. They see things longer term than maybe what we do as fans, as normal football fans. But it's clear. It should be clear to them, and as it's clear to us, that this season we lack a bit of identity on the pitch. We rely too much on individuals, and there's too many things going wrong when they're playing 90 minutes of football to say everything's well.
Yeah, and I still don't think it is, to be honest. You don't go from Thursday night having an issue with the culture in the dressing room to beating Motherwell 4-1 on a Sunday, and that just washes away. So as much as I'm enjoying the victory, and that's great, and hopefully we can build on it, Kevin, it is definitely cautionary as far as I'm concerned, because we've kind of been here already this season with the false dawn that was 60 minutes against Lille, followed up by a Scottish Cup semi-final victory against Aberdeen, followed up by one of the worst performances in Europe that I've ever seen. So it's definitely a cautionary. That's always the caveat at the moment, and until we go on a longer run of games. And I've seen a lot of people saying that the international break has come at a good time for us. I tend to agree with that. I think part of that will be some players coming back from injury. Now, we thought we had Ayer back. He hobbled off. We don't know how serious it is. You would hope that the international break assists his recovery and that he's back for our next game against Hibs. Julien is due back. I don't know if he'll be thrown right in against Hibs. We had a conversation yesterday, Kevin, about how Julien and Ayer was the partnership that we wanted to break up by bringing in another defender. That defender was Shane Duffy. Now, you know, we're now calling for Ayer and Julien. It's a dream partnership all of a sudden. People weren't saying that after the game at Kilmarnock.
No, or Livingston at any point. Again, this absence makes the heart go fonder with some of these guys, but I don't think Julien's got his limitations, but he doesn't seem to get turned as easy as what Duffy gets, and he seems to have settled in quicker to the Scottish game than what Duffy does. What Duffy has, it's a completely different. We've defended Duffy and his mindset, and the fact is this is the biggest club that he's ever going to play for. It's a club that he supported as a boy, but he just can't make the basic mistakes that he has been making. But again, I'm going to defend him a small bit, that we get opened up as a team far too easily. And even yesterday, he's not there yesterday, and we lose a poor goal for a set play.
You open up as a team, I get that, and I know that Christie gave away the free kick. Christie, who had an involvement in both goals, one of them being as an agitator, that's obviously putting the defender under pressure for the first goal. But in football, Kevin, if you're a midfield player and you give away a free kick 40 or 50 yards away from goal, you should be able to trust that your centre halves and your defence, your defensive unit can deal with a flighted ball into the box. So yes, I get defending more as a team, but something like that is indicative of the issues that the Celtic defence has had all season. We can't defend a corner. We can't defend a simple loft into the box from a free kick.
And that's all it was.
So that's defensive. So although I do get you defend from the front and all this, I do get that. I think the issue is the heart of that defence. And I think what we need to do is we need to establish what is our best shape at the back. And once we've discovered what the best shape is, who do we play and try and get a partnership in there? Because we've got a goalkeeper who's sitting on the bench at the moment. It costs £4.5 million. There doesn't seem to be the same relationship. Let's go back to our relationship we had before. Craig Gordon in goals, Denier and Van Dijk in front of them. Mm-hmm. Now there's a backline that could deal with a lofted ball into the box. And so what you're looking for is that diamond, first and foremost, and then you start looking at the fullbacks if you're playing with a 4, which I think Neil Lennon is going to be favouring from now on. The issue that I've got with the 4 is we're not actually playing with 2 full-backs, and I get that Laxalt can play left-back. He could probably play centre-forward. The guy's brilliant. That was probably his worst game yesterday, actually. And I'm not criticising him because I think he's going to be an astute signing this season. We'll get on to Frimpong because we're going to be forced to play someone else on there anyway. But I found it interesting, Kevin, yesterday at half-time when they looked at the average positional play of everybody on the park. Laxalt and Frimpong were on a halfway line. I think that's an issue.
That goes back to what Lennon says after the game or on Thursday night. He says that we need to get back to basics. We need to learn to do the basics again, or was it when he was speaking about the whole team watched the game together, which has caused a bit of a ripple on the social media as well, regarding post-match analysis and stuff like that. But where would you want your fullbacks to be? I mean, we defend with a seemingly high line anyway, so the fullback's been on the halfway line doesn't seem that.
I think it's an issue when you're playing Ross County and they're cutting through you 3 times in the first half. I think it's an issue when an aimless ball against Ferencvaros turns into the winning goal. I think that is the issue. So if you're playing with 2 fullbacks, Celtic have a tradition of overlapping fullbacks. We're now playing with 2 wing-backs. And I think a wing-back, the onus is on offensive play. An overlapping fullback is defend first. I think that's the issue. So we were criticising Greg Taylor, for example, as a whole, as a collective, because he wasn't getting the final ball and etc. But as a defender, I think he would be doing a better job than our right back, who up until yesterday was Frimpong, because he's out of position continually. And I'll come back to Frimpong because obviously his injury is going to be a point of discussion today in regards to the poor officiating that we're seeing all too often this season.
But we're sitting with 2 sitting midfielders.
Mm-hmm.
Who should be covering the fullbacks when the fullbacks go up the pitch.
Should be being the word. And
this is where I'm going back to, it's a team issue, because you've mentioned corner kicks, we mentioned set plays. We've got 9 players in the box, all with a job. All should know their job when at corner kicks and set plays coming into the box.
Right, and we're not defending it. So there's an issue.
So for me, I understand what you're saying with the centre defence. I think the number of free kicks we give away outside the box area, 30 yards, 40 yards from our goal, is a problem as well, because I think there's a panic to try and stop balls going into the boxes. The ball going into the box, you get the niggly wee free kicks.
Is that because the people who are giving them away aren't trusting that we can deal with the ball going into the box?
Well, you could say that. That's what it looks like, because you look at some of them, they're really, really petty. Like they're really like pushing in the back, wee nudges. Now, we have got a problem with defending balls into the box. Teams are going to play for opportunities to put the ball into the box.
That's the weakness.
And so if we're buying their free kicks or committing these free kicks when we don't really need to, then we're putting pressure on ourselves. And I think that it's a whole team thing. I've said previously, if our front 4 don't play, and I mean offensively and defensively, then we struggle.
Well, you've got that kind of horseshoe, Kevin. Like Salt on the left, Frimpong on the right. Up top yesterday, maybe a Yeti, but obviously Edouard or Griffiths. And then behind that, you've got Christie, Rogic and El Yunusi. So that 5 players there right? That should be an issue for any team playing against that, and I don't have an issue with that. It's behind then we've got the issue. Now, if you're looking or you're pinpointing the deeper midfield players, McGregor all of a sudden's a deep lying midfield player. I think he's better offensively. You know, when you look back at his play over the last few seasons, then you're looking at Scott Brown. You're looking at Scott Brown. So he can't cover with his legs Frimpong, because Frimpong spends 90% of his time in the opposition's top third. And I think, obviously, if you're looking at the whole team defending as a team, then that's your issue then. It's the two in front of the two centre-halves. So you've got to look at what the shape is in that team, Kevin. I mean, Duffy's not been able to manage the shape. That's why he's sitting on the bench. Barkas was unfortunate because he got injured. Will he come back in? So I guess the question would be, and I asked the question yesterday, our next competitive game, give me your backline. What's the shape? Who's in goals?
It depends on, obviously, I'm going to say this, if everybody is available, what my backline's going to... We know Frimpong's not going to be available, we know that.
Right.
But my backline would be Barkas, because I think Barkas is better at dealing with cross balls than Scott Bain. Right back is El Hamed, only because after that right back, after El Hamed, we've only got Ralston. But El Hamed also adds a bit of height, and he's also played centre-half. It's Julien, Ayer and Laxalt.
Right, so then you're looking at a situation where you've got Beaton. Is he the answer in front of the defence? Is he the guy? Is he the guy where he should be playing where McGregor is, because McGregor's much better further up?
That's interesting.
So Beaton, is he the answer? Bring him out of the central defence.
Does Beaton naturally slow the game down though?
Yeah, he definitely does.
Does he
no doubt.
Does he naturally slow the game down? And has he got the legs? He's got the game intelligence to play that position, but has he got the legs to cover Brown alongside him?
Well, even, let's say we think that's the answer, right? Then you're looking at who drops out. You know, there's the question. Who drops out? So you're looking at Brown or McGregor, and for me, McGregor's the first team on that name on that team sheet for me. So he's not going to drop out. But then you're looking at your captain. So it becomes a selection nightmare. But it's an option.
Who's been shoehorned into that side? It's McGregor. McGregor's been shoehorned into that side.
Because that's not his strongest position. Yeah.
So if you do have a problem in that area and you need a bit more energy in that midfield area, then what's the natural conclusion that you come to? You take out the 36-year-old who has maybe lost a yard of pace, but then you're taking out a 36-year-old, which is the state of mind of that team, which is the leader of that side. So it's not a simple answer as taking out Scott Brown and putting Beaton in there. I think putting Beaton in there leads to other problems that we maybe don't have. I just do think that we just lack. You don't know how we're going to play. At this point last season, we knew how we played. And maybe that was because the front four were playing well. Maybe this is just down to individual performances dropping off them. We've got to look at why those performances have dropped off. But let's go back to the Heysel days of the Invincible treble. You knew how Celtic were going to play. You knew how Brendan Rodgers was going to set up Celtic to play. You just need to look at his Leicester side to see this is how he plays. He kept possession, and keeping possession is very, very defensive, because if you've got the ball, the other team can't score, and that's how Brendan Rodgers' teams actually defended. We're like one of these great bits of street art, and you see in New York. And it's great, it's all nice and colourful. So when Brendan Rodgers' first season, this street art was done, right? And it was bright and colourful. We're now 4 years down the line and it's weather beaten, and the council are trying to power wash it off. That's where we are. We're that faded for that point.
So in that analogy then, the council try to spray it off. Playing the council in that analogy are the officials and the referees in Scotland, Kevin, which takes us on to the next point. Jeremy Frimpong's career, we've said time and time again, could well be hampered by the type of tackle that we witnessed yesterday, Kevin. Quite early doors in the season, sitting in here on a match day, we spoke about him undoubtedly being Celtic's most hacked player, most fouled player. And it's come to roost. That's exactly what's happening. Now, the tackle yesterday was reminiscent of Bowman's against Tierney at Celtic Park, where you're basically millimetres away from a career-threatening injury, because if your stud's sticking that turf, Kevin, and you've got the straight leg, the way that he's gone in there ends your career. Now, Jeremy Frimpong, for all the criticism that he gets, and I still maintain that I don't think he's a defender, hence the opening point that I was making there about the fullbacks, Kevin, because I do think he leaves the centre halves exposed.
We've got a decision to make with Frimpong. How do we develop Frimpong? Do we develop him as a right back, or do we develop him as a further forward?
That's player? The first decision you make. And from there,
somebody's got to come in and make that decision.
Yeah, for me, he's an offensive player every day of the week. It's like asking Tom Roderick to defend. Right, Tom Roderick doesn't defend.
I agree with you.
And it's, we're trying to get the guy to do something that naturally doesn't have the instinct to do.
I agree with you. I know nothing about football, but we've got guys there we pay loads and loads of money to, who have forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, who are still insisting on trying to play him as a fullback. It's bizarre.
I know. So Frimpong is on the end of the worst challenge that I've seen this season. But it's one of many bad challenges, Kevin. And the big thing is, again, I think it's important, especially when you've had a decent result. We're going into the international break. We've got to enjoy that result. This isn't a negative podcast for anybody who's tuning in. But let's have a look at this overall standard of refereeing this season. We can go further back. I mean, it's been an issue for many, many years, but let's focus on this season, because I think this season is going to be all about fine margins, Kevin, for so many reasons. One of the reasons is we've got a challenger, right? That's a big, big reason, right?
You are looking extremely good.
Well, we've got a challenger. I mean, yesterday, the free scoring element against Hamilton, what I would like to say, for anybody who thinks that Brian Chipper Rice is going to lie down to Rangers, trust me, you don't know the guy. Celtic daft. I mean, there's no way he would do that, right? So maybe Rangers dismantled that Hamilton side at Ibrox. So we're up against that, and that's fine. And everybody realises that, Kevin. There's nobody denying that these days, is there, really? But I think because of that, and because the season might be called early, as it was last season, we need to ensure, obviously, the points average. Now, it's going to be very tight. We might be talking about going down to goals. It's always something that needs to be considered. So when Rangers are going out there and scoring 8 yesterday, and we're getting a good victory at Fir Park, but we're still basically 5 goals worse off. That is going to be fine margins, is my point. But because of that, the refereeing cannot be as inconsistent as it has been so far. So just off the top of my head, and I've not studied this or analysed this in any great depth, but just off the top of my head, I'm looking at Dundee United when Dallas refereed the 1-0 game at Tannadice, Kevin. And the treatment of Odsonne Edouard by Mark Connolly was such that Eddie was injured for the European game. Did that contribute to our exit? Well, he is the classiest player that we've got on form, Kevin. He likes the European stage. Yeah, it probably did. Then we've got the St Johnstone game when we got the 2 late goals. And the referee in that game was Nick Walsh. I counted 2 sending off offences, both by the same player, but 2 sending off offences by Murray Davidson. He got a booking in the end. And then yesterday, people might think I'm being harsh here, I think there were 2 reds. And I think that Cole and Tony Watt were lucky to escape without getting sent off. Both of them got a yellow, I think. So for me, that's abysmal. That's an abysmal standard of refereeing. And I don't know if anyone else is facing the same standard of refereeing this season, and that's a huge concern for me.
I'm going to disagree with you. You says it's inconsistent. I think it's really consistent. It's really consistently poor.
No, what I said was it was inconsistent across all the other teams in the league when compared to the way that Celtic are dealt with.
Aye, I'll maybe give you that, but I haven't seen enough games out with the ones with Celtic. I can only talk about the Celtic games with any sort of knowledge or justification because I've seen them all. And the standard of refereeing has been really consistently shocking in every Celtic game this season. Absolutely. Yesterday, Andrew Dallas missed a penalty for Motherwell. If we're going to say how bad Andrew Dallas was, that hang in the first half with Scott Brown was a penalty Motherwell yesterday. But for him to have a clear view on an assault, and it is an assault on Frimpong, and not even think about giving the free kick until he made up his mind that Frimpong was injured, and then to only see it as a yellow card is utterly... He should never referee another game in Scotland this season. When they review that, when they actually review that decision, I mean, I think it's been universally decried. You spoke about Ryan Bowman against Kieran Tierney. One again, what's maybe enough has not been made of. Same manager, same team, 2 shocking challenges. What does he say to his team before they go out? How fired up does he get his team? For somebody, that tackle yesterday, was it Devante Cole? It was Devante Cole. That could have ended Frimpong's career. That was Roy Keane on Alfie Haaland. That was Neil Simpson on Ian Durrant. If Frimpong's foot had been planted, his career was over. His career was over. And for the referee to be standing looking at it is just, and not even see it as a red card is shocking. If there was VAR in Scottish football,
they'd still get it wrong.
Well, probably, but you would hope to think that he would have been sent off right away. It's not even a. I'm speaking about the penalty kick about Motherwell. That was maybe a decision. Err on the side it was a penalty, but there's no decision to be made with that challenge.
No,
it's as clear a red card as you'll ever see.
It's a level of intent, Kevin. You know, it's not even as though you're going for a ball that's in flight. You know what I mean? And you catch somebody at a certain area of the body. It's the height of that challenge, and as you say, if the foot's planted, we're looking at another scenario of some that you've already mentioned. We've lost a lot of great players through bad injuries down the years. You know, when you think about even John Kennedy and people like the original Brian McLaughlin, we didn't quite lose him, but he never ever maintained the standards or reached the standards that we expected. You know, Stevie Murray. Remember Stevie Murray? He was a hugely promising player. We've lost a lot of players through bad injuries. And we said early doors this season, he needs protection from referees. He needs protection. Now, I believe that there's a marker thrown down early doors in the season and it's not improved. He continually is treated like that. And what's happened? We're sitting here having a conversation that we knew we were going to have. I remember him getting stretchered off last season for a horrific tackle. And, you know, that's a guy who, for me, with that development that you mentioned earlier, and I think that will come, Kevin, I think that development will come. We're looking at a player who might end up being an international footballer on the top stage, world football, if he develops, right? And that is how he's been treated in Scotland, and he's not been protected. So what does the club do in this scenario?
The club need to speak out about it. I would hope Neil Lennon, the next chance that he gets in a press conference, comes out and speaks about it and says we've lost a player for however long it's going to be, and this should have been nipped in the bud earlier on in the season. Teams are allowed to get away with kicking more skillful and better players. You go back to, you got stretchered off against St Johnstone.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, we can go back to the St Johnstone game earlier on there. You've got Murray Davison, who just looks like a bloody red card any time that he comes onto the pitch. And you've also got the guy who brung down Kamala, but Kamala gets up and actually scores. That's a red card as well.
Yeah, good point.
That's Kamala. The force of that challenge was like Kamala getting hit with a bus, and he got up. But the guy still should have got sent off for that challenge, even though Kamala got up and scored.
Nah, agreed. You've
got teams whose MO against Celtic is we'll boot Eddie, Dundee United this season. Mark Connolly absolutely assaulted Eddie up and down the place and got away with it until he got booked in the 84th, 80 odd minutes.
Token gesture.
It was a token gesture. St Johnstone as well booted us off the park. We go back to the other point, the Kilmarnock game earlier on in the season. We praised the Kilmarnock that day. And in the middle of the park, you've got Dicker, Power, and can't remember the other guy in the middle of the park. But they like a challenge as well, but not to the level that we've seen Motherwell, St Johnstone and Dundee United do this season. Mm-hmm. Their game plan was to see how much they could get away with. Let's see how far this referee is going to allow us to do. Mm-hmm. Then when you don't get booked for the first assault, you go, I can get away with this then. I can get away with this. I can keep on going and going to see how far I can push the letters of the law. And if you want the Scottish game to improve, I'm going to have a look at the bigger picture here. If you want the Scottish game to improve, the standard of refereeing has to improve, and the referees have got to protect decent football players. Mm-hmm. The days you look at leagues all over Europe, you never see tackles like you do in the Scottish League. I mean, I'm sure there'll be guys in Europe watching Devante Cole's tackle yesterday all over Europe going, how did he not get sent off?
How did he get away with that?
How did he get away with that? Mm-hmm. That's shocking. That's ridiculous. How did he not get away with that? And it just gives this, the standard of refereeing and what the referees let teams away with, just keeps Scotland stuck in this, we're a footballing backwater.
You look at the academy he came from, Manchester City, right? In Cham. Edouard comes from the PSG academy. Now, you imagine being a young starlet, Kevin, looking for that move because you're not going to get into anything beyond the under-23s at Man City, for example. When you're looking at that, you think, well, I could be up there and finish within 18 months because they don't protect the ball players. I mean, I think it's getting to it's already at the ridiculous level, and that's why I ask, what do you do? What do you do to combat that as a club?
We're talking from a Celtic point of view here, but I'm also talking, you saw James Maddison was at Aberdeen as well, a flair player, but he got a fair bit of attention when he was up here as well. Like it or lump it, Ryan Kent's a decent player as well, and he'll probably, I don't watch enough of the Rangers games anyway, but he'll maybe get the same treatment as well. Because that's what, in Scotland, that's what they do to stop flair players. You need managers to talk out about it. You need Celtic to talk out about it. If we lose Frimpong we could lose Frimpong for the rest of the season, if it's ligament damage.
Yeah, and he's already in, because obviously Forrest is out for another 8 weeks. So if we're playing a right fullback, Kevin, then Elhamed's your obvious choice, but we lose a bit offensively. And then that probably falls on the shoulders of Ryan Christie. And by the way, I think Christie and Elhamed could be a good combination.
I think it could be a solid combination down that side. So the club have really got to speak out about this. They've got to. And they should have spoke out about it after the Dundee United game. They should have spoke out about it after the St Johnstone game. You just didn't speak about bad refereeing when you get beat.
No.
You've got to highlight it constantly. Mm-hmm. And we highlighted constantly when the referees went on strike. And I think the standard of refereeing is now worse than what it was then. Definitely. I'm sure people have got views on it, but I can only go by what I watch, and that's the Celtic games. And the standard of refereeing is utterly shocking.
Going to have a look at some of the comments coming in, Kevin, because we are very busy this afternoon on the comments section. People are getting involved via YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. If you are on the YouTube channel, make sure that you do subscribe. It's free and we broadcast on a daily basis. Now, Richard Murray, on that point, asks the question, do any of you lot watch football away from Celtic? Genuine question. Well, Kevin, you already know my habits when it comes to football. I never watch football on the TV unless Celtic are playing. Never. Doesn't matter who's playing. Premiership down south, don't watch it. International football, not interested. I watch Celtic and that's it.
Not as much as what I do watch other teams, but not as much as what I used to. Mainly because I've got two veins and Octonauts is on my telly all the time. And but I do watch when I get the opportunity, I do like watching a game of football.
I know a lot of people who will watch anything, any game, any league, wherever it is played in the world. And I can't get invested in that, Kevin. I just don't have that emotional investment.
I find it harder to watch when there's no fans. I find my mind wandering. If it's a game that you've got, as you mentioned, if it's a game that you've got no emotional investment in, your mind wanders. If you've got no...
At least if you're at the game, you can watch something else. What I mean is you can follow a particular player, or, you can actually look at the shape. And that's me maybe just being really sad. But when you're at the game, you don't follow the ball, do you? You look at other things on the park.
Look at yesterday, you've got Man City, Liverpool, two of the best teams in Europe. And I remember a time where I would have went out my way to try and watch that game. Yesterday, I didn't even bother.
Listen, it's been a gradual thing for me, though, because I remember I was a big English football fan back in the 80s due to Panini sticker books, Shoot magazine, Match magazine. You knew every single player in every team. Moving into the 1990s, I was intoxicated with the whole Sky Sports thing, this whole WWF box office style promotional campaign, and I watched every game I could. Monday Night Football, remember? And you were watching players. I mean, back then you are watching players like Cantona, of course, and Tony Yeboah playing for Leeds, and the great Newcastle side that came through. So these are the kinds of teams that I remember fondly when I'm going back to the early 90s. But as the English game has developed, in inverted commas, I've lost interest in that. And then when it comes to the Italian football, I remember back in the 90s again, like everybody else, kind of being hooked on the Channel 4 coverage of Italian football, whisper it, but a lot of that was down to the interest around Paul Gascoigne at that time.
Of course it was.
But since then, there's no league that I watch. There's no other league outside of Scotland that I'm interested in.
I dip in... if I've got time, and if there's nothing else on and I've got the TV to myself, I will try and find a game of football to watch. I do like watching Italian games, but even then, the Italian games is probably more about what's happening off the pitch, the ultra culture there, and even if it's not even if the stadium's not sold out, there's still a spectacle in Italian football. Well, to answer Richard Murray's point, I do watch other football, but not to the same level I watch Celtic, so I feel I can only comment with any sort of evidence-based and little knowledge on the Celtic games that I watch, because it's probably the only games at this precise moment in time where I'm paying 100% attention. And that's mainly to do to the fact that there's no crowds and there doesn't seem to be any atmosphere or anything to hold you.
And you know that you've got to analyse the games, because I'll be asking you questions on it when you come onto the Celtic State of Mind bulletin.
But even then, if that wasn't going to happen, there's been some Celtic games this season I would have switched off and went and done something else.
See, that's a big thing. I'm a gluttony for punting. The only time I've ever walked away, and I says this the other day, was after Anton Rogan missed that penalty in the 1990 Scottish Cup final. I couldn't watch Brian Irvin's penalty. Couldn't watch it. I knew it was coming.
The only time I've ever done it, 1995 Coca-Cola Cup final. I still haven't seen the penalty kicks yet. All penalties. I still haven't seen them yet.
I blame Brian Potter for that, because he saved the penalty in the semi-final. Now, Celt67 comments on YouTube, truth, horrible tackle. No doubt about that. And Terry Tibbs, who is a regular contributor to the bulletin, never a penalty for Motherwell, Kev?
I thought it was. If it was up the other end, I would have been shouting for it. That's just my opinion. If it was up the other end, I would have expected it to be given to us.
Robert Highland on YouTube comments that Frimpong does not have the build to be a fullback in Scotland. I think he just shows far too much attributes in the top third, and I know that he needs to improve in his final ball. I thought his final ball was good yesterday.
His ball for the second goal, he actually picked out the run of Rogic brilliantly. On that point there, I don't think he's got the build for a fullback anywhere in Europe now. When you actually see some of the fullbacks who are all 6 foot athletic, I think he's a bit. We talk about throwbacks. I do think he's a wide forward. I think. See, teams are now playing one striker, 2 wide men with the seam. It seems, I think he's a wide forward, definitely.
Now, Philip DeMarco is commenting on YouTube, and he reckons that these refereeing decisions are just honest mistakes, Kevin. Now, obviously, there's been lots said and written about the standard, would you call it the standard, or the intent of Scottish refereeing. And I just think it's a shame that we need to continually go on about it. However, when it's as blatant as it was yesterday, it needs commented on. We do the Celtic State of Mind bulletin every single day, and we've got to cover all aspects of that, Kevin. So, as well as the action on the park, you know, when the transfer window's open, we go through every single target. If it's the referees that are an issue, we need to cover everything. We can't leave any stone unturned, can we?
No, of course we can. We're talking about a team, a club, a culture that we invest our time in. Probably more time that is healthy for us. So we've got to comment on everything that affects this thing that plays a major part in our life. And the refereeing is part of that. Sometimes we might come across as paranoid androids, but what we're talking about today is not being paranoid. It's fact. There's evidence. There's 15 different camera angles that will prove what we're talking about is right.
Well, Terry Tibbs goes on to, we need to drop the bias chat, just concentrate on winning our games and stop finger pointing. I think when one of your most exciting players is on the end of a tackle like that yesterday, it would be remiss of any of us not to discuss that. It was a dreadful challenge. So first and foremost, let's criticise the player for making the horrific challenge. But then the fact that he's not punished, that needs to be discussed. I mean, we're not going to get into the realms of bias and that narrative, because that's something that we could discuss again and again and again, Kevin. And this season, I just think the margins are so fine, like I said at the top of the show, that we just need a level of consistency across the board. That's all anyone can really expect.
You can't prove bias, but you can prove incompetence. And everything that we've highlighted today is just proven incompetence of the officials in Scotland. And it's just the same as we were speaking about our incompetence at actually defending and giving away too many chances. It's the same, it's part of the game. It's part of the game that we're reviewing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course it is, aye. And it's a talking point of yesterday's game, as is the fact that we've seen the best side of Mo El-Yunusi now all season and last season as well, Kevin. Obviously, he's a player that I've championed. I mean, I'm not saying I discovered him. He was a £16 million signing for Southampton a few years back. But I have championed him. But I've been disappointed time and time again this season with his performances. We spoke about what's his best position. After the international break last time round, he comes back, we start playing him through the middle. He scores in Europe, he gets back in the side. I mean, there's no doubt his quality, but it's whether or not we can get that tune on a more regular basis out of him. We didn't get it on Thursday night. He was disappointed when he came off. He was in the news being criticised after the game. Yesterday's performance shows you what we can get if he's on form, and it's important that we try and keep him at that level.
How do we keep him at that level? That's down to the management team to keep him at that level. And it's an interesting point that you made, that the management team played him. So that maybe says something about his mentality, his attitude, that we've got nobody else maybe to play that position at this precise moment. We have. That's just a flippant comment. But you can tell that he's got ability. Then you can't disagree with anything that you've says. That two games out of 4 good games is no good enough for Celtic. It's no good enough for the player. If he's looking to actually put himself in a shop window, if he's looking to get himself into the Southampton team, he's not doing himself justice. And maybe that's what you've got to look at. Maybe the management team have got to get that player to look in the mirror and go, you need to do yourself justice here. There is a prize for you if you do yourself justice here, but this turning up every second game is not good enough. For you, not just the club, but it's not good enough for him. Because a lot of these players are selfish, Do you think That's maybe that's maybe just a gross generalisation that I've just gave football players there. He probably does care about Celtic. Maybe he does. I don't know. I don't ken the guy. But the only thing that we can say for sure about anybody in a professional capacity is they look after themselves. Look after themselves first. So that's what Brendan Rodgers. I keep on talking about Brendan. That's what Brendan Rodgers was good at. He got the player first and foremost looking after himself, knowing if the player looked after himself, the team, he would look after the team as well. And maybe the management have got to try and get into Moyes' head and to try and get that consistency from him, by saying to him, this is going to be beneficial for you if you rip it up here.
Exactly, and that is what we sell. That's the dream we sell to players coming to the club, Kevin. And then it's down to them, because how many haven't made it? How many have disappeared into obscurity? You know, probably a lot more than those who have gone on and done what Dembele did and done what Van Dijk did. I mean, how often have we gone out there and signed a centre half that none of us knew a great deal about? You know, so many times down the last 10 years. Van Dijk made it happen. You know, and that the onus is on the player at that stage now. I'm looking at a point being made by Gary Gallagher. Welcome to the show. And you're commenting on YouTube. El Hamid before Frimpong for me, right back, and I would play Frimpong right wing. Big Julian hopefully back for the Hibs game. I think we might be all right now. Well, when players like Julian start coming back in, Kevin, when we look a wee bit forward, because it's a relevant question in relation to what our best team is going to be when everybody's back fit. So you're kind of looking at, for example, Julian coming back during the international break. You would hope Ayer comes back. Mikey Johnson, perhaps. I think he's due back. Within that period, we're going to take time with him and build him up. Forrest won't be back. Frimpong certainly won't be back. So with all that in mind, what do you think now is Celtic's strongest starting 11? How do we shape up against Hibs if we get through the international break without any further cases of the virus?
Hibs, tough away game. I would be having a look at taking on board what Lennon says to do the basics right. So to do the basics right, based on the last couple of weeks, so do you want a team for Hibs, or do you want what I think our best side is? Or do you just want a team for the Hibs game? I'll give you a team for the Hibs game.
Well, there should be, obviously, there should be consideration given to the opposition. Of course there should, Kevin. We're going to Easter Road. I mean, it's going to be one of what I reckon has been one of the toughest challenges over the last few seasons. I mean, Brendan Rodgers didn't like going to Easter Road, did he? So yeah, you're always going to be looking at the side you're playing. But I think it's important that Celtic, if we want to try and get that momentum going and get the partnerships working, you're talking about Christie and El Hamid now, they're going to have to start working together. The centre-half partnership, what is your best partnership at centre-back? You know, so if you look at that, obviously we're one eye on the opposition. What is our strongest side going to Easter Road?
I'm going to base this on the players that have played, have been there the longest and are able to play what we want to do through muscle memory. Because after this international break, there's not going to be much time, no turnaround time, training time for the coaching staff to get what they want over. So you've got to deal with that. So it would be Bain, El Hamid, Julian, Ayer, Laxalt. And I'm putting Laxalt in there because that goes against what I've just said, but he just seems like an intelligent football player who would be able to do whatever you ask him to do in whatever language that you ask him to do it. In the centre of midfield, you go with Brown and McGregor, even though, as we've spoke about, McGregor seems to be shoehorned in to that side. You would then go for Christie, Rogic, and based on yesterday, Moy again. And up front, it is between Eddie and Ayeti. I thought Ayeti was brilliant yesterday as well. His hold-up play, his link-up play, just his general attitude and energy is fantastic in contrast to what Eddie's been over the last couple of weeks, I would go with Ayeti.
Ayeti?
Right.
Now, again, we were talking yesterday about the style of play of Ayeti, and when he came in, people were likening him to Gary Hooper. Gary Hooper always struck me as being the old-fashioned style penalty box player, Kevin. I don't think Ayeti's like Gary Hooper at all.
No, there's a lot more to his game, and that's maybe a slight on Gary Hooper, but when Ayeti first came in, he was doing a lot of great work in the box, but maybe that was down to his lack of fitness. And as he's getting fitter, you can see his whole game is now coming into play. He's got, I keep on going on, I love seeing players with a great touch and great football intelligence, and he's got that. You can see he tries to bring guys into the game. It's not just, I'm holding the ball here and I don't know what to do with it when I get the ball in.
Are you sold on playing one up front with the likes of Ayeti though? Because I don't think, you're always looking for a partnership, and I think one of the sparks last season was the partnership between Edouard and Griffiths, revitalising the team, because Edouard had been kind of carrying the can up front on his own for a long time, far too long. So you're always looking at that partnership, aren't you? You think back to the great partnerships we've had in the past. Are you sold on the one up front?
Yeah, it's not really one up front, it's like four up front.
One striker up front. I'm looking for two strikers, a partnership. I know that you've got Rogic, Christie, El Yunusi.
Well, what formations can you play two strikers? 3-5-2, 4-4-2. When we played well last season under the 3-5-2, we had James Forrest as the right wing back. James Forrest is not there to play the right wing back anymore. I think it's been proved with the free, and Julien, whatever, I can't remember what the back three was, but I think it's already been proved this season we haven't got the fullbacks to play a 3-5-2. Then you move to a 4-4-2. So you're moving to a 4-4-2 and you're going, well, you're sticking Ryan Christie wide right. If you're wanting Ryan Christie into the team.
Well, that's more or less where he played yesterday.
But still, in a 4-4-2, it's a different role for Ryan Christie. Maybe a coach will tell me that's different. And on the left-hand side, you're putting Moy on the left-hand side, and you're taking out Rogic. You're taking out the number 10 to bring in another centre forward.
I think it's inconceivable that we would go into the second stage of the season without Edouard. Albeit he's not been in the best form, Kevin, but he's still a game changer. He's a match winner. And I think if you're playing Ayeti in front of Edouard, a fully fit Edouard, then your best striker's on the bench. Your best striker's on the bench. Now, you've seen some signs of they two being able to team up. We know that Eddie can play with Griffiths. We've got the three players playing behind the striker at the moment in El Yunusi, Rogic, Christie. And I think there's a lot of shape that formations that you could play with two strikers. It doesn't have to be a flat 4-4-2. We don't even play a formation that you could describe as that, because you're playing four at the back, then you've got the two deep lying midfield players. You've then got three in front of them and one up top. So there's different ways you can shape it. I just think when you've got four strikers, and I don't think any of us really expected to have the four, let's be honest, after the last transfer window. Klimala's fourth choice.
He's dropped off the face of a cliff, ain't he? And nobody cares where he is.
And in the gym, probably.
That's what annoyed me yesterday as well. You've got Neil Lennon speaking about Lee Griffiths bumming him up, and he doesn't even get any minutes yesterday. Mm-hmm. Saying, he's almost fit to start a game, and he doesn't get any game time yesterday. Mm-hmm. It just seems like we can't trust anything that's getting says anymore with anybody.
There's a lot of contradictions. There's a lot of contradictions. I mean, 1 minute we're using the team that's won 11 trophies as an argument as to the criticism being over the top, but that same team that's won the 11 trophies, there's a culture issue with them. So there's a lot of contradictions coming out. Now, I understand that, Neil Lennon, when he's getting fired questions after the game, it's going to be difficult to field a lot of them. The culture answer, Jim Orr reckons he's maybe used the wrong words there. Neil Lennon knows what culture means. He's a very intelligent man. And I just think there's a bit of frustration creeping in there as well because of the poor performance. And I hope it isn't a culture issue or a culture change that's required, Kevin. There was a moment last season after the winter break where everything changed. everything changed. And we prefer to view the second half of the season as the real Celtic last season. Do you think that the same thing's going to be happening this season? Is it basically been that we're dealing with a lot of issues, a lot of injuries, illness? You've also got this unrest, which, it's not a rumour, it's not a WhatsApp group rumour, it's come through the interviews with Neil Lennon, talking about players wanting to leave and a culture issue. Is that something that we can iron out, and hopefully when we get back from the international break, we can see a Celtic that we would expect from the players that are at our disposal?
We need to iron it out. For the sake of the football club, we need to iron it out, or either that's something's got to give. Can I see us getting back to what we were in January last season? We had a conversation on Thursday when we spoke about belief. I've got the faith we can do it, but I haven't got the belief. The reason being, we're now, this season's shortened. There's no winter break this season. There's no chance to take a step back. Even though we're in an international break just now, I think there's about 14 or 15 players left Lennoxtown today, tomorrow, to go and join their international. So the players that are left there, there can't be any serious work done with the players that are left there. I think January is going to be massive for us. I really do. And I think the unrest that Neil Lennon spoke about earlier on in the season could rear its ugly head again in January. And you might see players agitating for a move.
Well, we shall see, Kevin. We're moving into an international break.
I can't see any opportunity for us to have another Dubai like what we've had over the last couple of years. We've went to Dubai. Well, it's not going to be there because there is no break. And the way this season is going, and the way that this season's calendar is shortened, and the amount of problems, as you rightly say, that Neil Lennon's already highlighted, I think January we could actually self-implode. Oh,
that's a nice positive end to the show then, Kevin. Mm-hmm. Lovely. Well, we'll be back at 12:30 tomorrow. All that's left for me to say is thank you to everybody for getting involved via YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. And thank you, Kevin Graham, once again for joining me on Celtic State of Mind.
I'll be positive next week. Cheers.